We are privileged today to participate in a forum between Tim Cook, the 2021 Institute of Industrial and Systems Engineers Captain of Industry awardee, and Annie Dorsey, Auburn University student and IISE chapter president. Annie is an industrial and engineering student at Auburn, and she has spent many summers gaining work experience as an industrial engineer, working for such diverse companies as Southwest Airlines, Steelcase, and General Electric. She is currently an intern at Tesla and will shortly begin yet another internship with Walmart. Also, in addition to her studies, throughout her time at Auburn, she has made volunteering a priority. She has served over 200 hours helping food insecurity in Alabama with various food banks and pantries. Tim Cook is also an alumnus of the Industrial Engineering Department at Auburn University, class of 1982. During his time at Auburn, he was also a student member of the IIE chapter. His career, though still in its prime, is already legendary. Of course, he serves as CEO of Apple and is completing nearly a decade in that role. He is noted for his transformative record of innovation in technology, the environment and sustainability, and human equity and inclusion around the globe. He is one of the most impactful business leaders in the world today and is arguably the most famous industrial engineer of all time. Tim and Annie, thank you very much. We look forward to your conversation.
Alice, thank you so much. Tim, it's great to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here, and Alice, thank you very much for that very generous introduction.
And Tim, as Alice just mentioned, you are an industrial engineer from Auburn. I'm an industrial engineer from Auburn. You're the CEO of Apple. So I would like to think that bodes well for me and my classmates. There has to be some sort of correlation or causation there.
You know, you're batting 1,000 so far. You started at Auburn, so that's a great start.
Definitely. Okay, so Tim, let's begin at the beginning for you, and that's the subject that's brought us all together, industrial engineering. How did you first become interested in industrial engineering, and why did you decide to pursue an IE degree? Did you have people in your life that were IEs?
I knew no one that was an IE at all. As a matter of fact, I'm the first person in my family to go to college. But what I did know was, when I was taking high school courses, I loved mathematics. I was one of the nerds that loved math. And so mathematics got me interested in engineering. And then as I began to look at different engineering disciplines, I was taken by industrial engineering because of the focus on both people and machine, instead of just the machine aspect of it. And then after 3 quarters at Auburn in the sort of the pre-engineering kind of role, I co-opted as an industrial engineer. And from that moment on, I was taken as that it was the right discipline for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you maybe didn't have any role models that were industrial engineers, but can you tell us about an early experience in the field that had a big impact on you and shaped where you'd go next?
That's a good question. When I co-opted initially, I co-opted at a place called Reynolds Aluminum. You know, they're the makers of Reynolds Wrap and different consumer products. And we were at the plant that made the rolls itself, not the packaging plant. And the economy, this was in the late 70s, early 80s. The economy was not in good shape. And the net of the situation was the plant had to lay off a bunch of people. It was a terrible situation. I'd never been involved in that before. And essentially everybody in the IE department left except for the manager and myself. And the only reason I was kept was because I was cheap. And then my manager was promoted and went to another plant, and all of a sudden I found myself as a co-op student being the only person in the IE department. And what I learned from that was that, you know, we can all rise to the occasion. And sometimes we don't know that in advance, but we all can. And I gained a lot of confidence in that really terrible time.
Yeah, I think especially hearing about like an early win in your career is especially reaffirming to know that that's where you're supposed to be.
I agree. It kind of gives you a spring in your step, and it reinforces when you're going back to school each quarter, it reinforces what parts of school are incredibly important and also which ones are not as important.
Totally. Okay, how has your background in IE impacted how you've led at Apple?
You know, Apple is a place where the status quo is never acceptable. And so we're a place where the misfits and the rebels came together, and we just want to make the best products in the world that enrich people's lives. And so in a large way, there's an intersection there with industrial engineering, because industrial engineers by nature are not satisfied people. You're always looking for a way to do something more efficient or safer or with higher quality, or whatever the situation might be that you're working on. It's the reverse of accepting the status quo. And so we're sort of kindred spirits.
Yeah, I love that impact of like culture with your schooling. I think that's really...
Yes. Oh, there's a definite intersection there.
Yeah. Okay, so while we're on the subject of leadership, what do you think makes for a great leader? And I would love to hear some specific principles that you try to incorporate into your own leadership style.
I'm a big believer in authenticity. As a leader and as a person, you know, I run across people occasionally that try to read a book and become the leader that was described in the book. And I've never found that to be a good formula. I think being yourself, for all of the good and all of the average and all of the bad, is a much better position to be in than to try to be someone else. I think there's other traits like curiosity and grit and the ability to inspire people, because leaders can do very little by themselves. You know, you're only as good as the people that, if you can inspire people. And so I think all of these, creativity, the ability to innovate and sort of see around the corner, all of these things are very important. And of course, if you're good at all of those things, it's likely that you're very passionate as well. And I found that passionate people really debating their position, really, you know, saying why they believe their way is right. There's that makes an incredible leader.
Yeah, I think so. Authenticity might not be something that you can grow in. I think that you maybe just dig deeper into yourself. Is there a way that you can grow in maybe curiosity or grit or some of the other things that you mentioned?
Yeah, I think trial by experience is good. But I think it's also just allowing yourself to think openly. You know, allowing yourself not to just take the principles of IE, that you're not accepting the status quo. And that'll put you in an environment where you're more open-minded and more creative. And then grit is all about seeing through the tough times. You know, life will not always be growth. Life will not always throw you the nice fast pitch that you've been looking for. You know, sometimes it throws you the curveball, and it takes a lot of perseverance to get through it. And that, to me, is what grit is all about. And I've found grit for me has been hugely important over many, many jobs in many, many different situations.
Yeah, I think that I love what you said about just when you're passionate about it, a lot of these things come more naturally, and you can see the passion when someone's doing these things.
That's exactly right. It's sort of finding what you're passionate about is probably the single most important thing you can do. Because if you find that, a lot of the other things happen naturally. You're more into it. You're probably more creative. You're more innovative. You're more authentic. because this is what you want to do, or authentic rather.
Yeah, definitely. That's great. One of the things that has defined your time as CEO is your history of leading with your values. For example, your commitment to privacy. How important is it to infuse industry with ethics?
I think it's really important. I think that as individuals, we're all placed on the earth to do the right thing. And we should all have values as people. And because companies are nothing more than a collection of people that are put together to accomplish something, a company should have values as well. And so I think that ethics is not some other thing or something that another department is responsible for. We are all responsible for doing what is right, regardless of how hard it is. And that has really been a North Star of ours at Apple. We're very focused on privacy because we believe privacy is a fundamental human right. We're focused on education because we believe it's the great equalizer. We're focused on climate change because we know that we want the people on Earth that succeed us to have a great place. We realize the man-made nature of it is such that we all can make a big difference there. And so these are just some of our basic beliefs that guide us.
Yeah. When the new iOS update came out, I referred to it as iOS 14 point privacy. Really excited just to see, I felt like it was very transparent with all of the apps, what it was and was not going to be tracking. And I mean, that's agreed. Like, that's a fundamental human right. And that's a gift that Apple gives to its users to be able to see that. So.
Very, very much, because we believe it's the user that should be deciding whether they're tracked or not. That companies that are doing surveillance should not be allowed to do this unless the user says it's okay. And so what Apple has always been about is a democratization of technology, of putting the power in the hands of the user. And this is just one more example of that.
Yeah, I think also while you're in school, it's very exciting to me and encouraging that we have, ethics classes required for all engineering degrees, ethical hacking clubs, all of these set up for students to embody ethics, like before we even go into industry.
Yes. Yeah, I applaud Auburn and other schools that are requiring ethics in school. I think it is so very important.
And it's interesting to consider these, to look at businesses and see where they have or haven't been ethical in their dealings. And I think you're right. Like, people are ethical. And so the company, which is a collection of people, should be ethical also.
That's exactly right. That's exactly how I look at it.
Yeah, great. Okay, so when it comes to privacy, you've said that the path of least resistance is rarely the path of wisdom. Of course, I think that's relevant in tons of different situations, but especially as an engineering student, that's applicable to my experiences ranging from classes to involvement to work. What would you say to students thinking about how to always do the right thing in their work?
I think if you ask somebody why they're doing something a certain way, and they respond because it's the way we've always done it, it's time to run. Mm-hmm. That is such a cop-out. And I think in our industry, in some cases, privacy is not viewed as a fundamental human right. And so we could have accepted that premise and gone along with the herd, but it would have been the wrong thing to do. And so we bring out tools like app tracking transparency that you mentioned earlier, and other tools like the privacy nutrition label and intelligent tracking protection, a lot of different things that we've done over the course of many years to put the power in the hands of in the user. But I think that basic principle is so important and so applicable to so many different things. I mean, climate change is another one that's very much like that. We can't accept that the world is just going to warm because of devastation that happens when it does. And so we have to do things differently.
Yeah, yeah. And so you mentioned climate change. The next question is going to jump into that. So with global challenges like climate change, I believe it's every person's responsibility to do their part. For someone entering an IE career, what does their responsibility look like? And how can we as IEs equip ourselves to think about and help address these issues?
Yeah, you think about it as an IE, you're probably responsible for the quality of products. You're probably responsible for the cost. You're probably responsible for the cycle time that it takes to manufacture. You may be responsible for the process of how things work. And just by a normal extension of that, you should also be responsible for the carbon footprint of what it is that you're doing. And just like you would be trying to increase the quality and decrease the cost and other key characteristics, you should have the objective of decreasing or eliminating the carbon footprint of what it is you're doing. And not only for the part that you can put your hands around, but if you're in manufacturing with a product, you should be looking at the whole supply chain downstream and upstream. And you should also be looking at if your product requires electricity, what's the carbon footprint of it after the customer has bought it? Mm-hmm. So it's this taking this holistic view. And so I think that basic idea of taking a holistic view of what it is that you're doing and contributing to is so important for an IE.
Yeah. Do you think that something like a carbon footprint would become a KPI along with cost
Yes.
or manufacturing time?
I very much do. And in fact, in Apple, it already is. And I believe that in other companies will follow that because that's the only way that we're going to meet the goals that we've got in front of us.
Yeah. That's great to think about. I think it's really exciting to think that could be another metric that we're all tracking.
I agree.
So we've experienced an unprecedented year with COVID exposing challenges to every business. How did Apple rise to the challenge and use its engineering know-how to support frontline health workers? And can you tell us why it was important for Apple to get involved?
Yeah, we asked ourselves at every turn of the pandemic, how could we help? And so, and as we started answering that, I think we surprised ourselves with some of the answers that we gave ourselves. For example, we have a lot of people that work in the supply chain area. We had never bought masks before, but we knew that we could. And so we knew we had people in a bunch of different countries that were making masks, and we thought that if we did the sourcing and logistics and quality control, which we felt we could do, that we could add to the mask supply not only in the United States, but in other countries. We did that, and around 40 million masks later, we had donated a ton of different masks to many, many states in the United States and in countries across the world. We also thought about what we could do from an exposure notification point of view, contact tracing. And so we worked with Google, who is a competitor of ours in most ways, to have the iOS system and the Android system work together and notify people that they were in close proximity to somebody that had been tested positive. This was a big deal. We invested in a company called Copan in order to increase the supply of test kits and put industrial engineering and other engineering folks with them to help teach them how to expand the output of the areas. We designed a face shield. We didn't know anything about face shields. We're not in that business, but we knew that we had great designers and that if they began to take apart what a face shield is, they could probably design a great one, and they did, and we donated tens of millions of those. And so it was all about, asking ourselves that constant question, what can we do to help? And the reason we did it is we're a part of the communities that we're in, and we sell products worldwide. We have customers worldwide, and wanted to help in every way that we could.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that you just mentioned that were really interesting to me. I love seeing all of these different companies coming together and all working towards the same goal to fight this global pandemic. Like, it wasn't just affecting the United States, it wasn't just affecting North America, it literally, the COVID-19 virus affected the entire world. And so to see everyone sort of come together to solve this problem was...
And it took everybody, because what we did in and of itself was a sort of a drop in the bucket to bending the pandemic curve. But if you take what we did with all other companies, with the person that's delivering the product for you, the person that continues to work in the restaurant to serve food, the people that are in the grocery store. I mean, you look at this total, and there were so many heroes with the pandemic. It was an awful situation, and still is an awful situation in several countries. But we saw some of the best of humanity out of it. And that needs to and did include companies.
Yeah, it's really great to just step back and think about that. So you'll soon mark 10 years as Apple's CEO, an impressive milestone. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
What are your sources of inspiration these days, and have these changed throughout your tenure?
I get a lot of inspiration from young people, like yourself. And what I see is that young people versus my generation are already more focused on what they can do to help society in general. And this excites me, and it leads me to believe that the world will be a much better place in the future. So I get very excited on young people. I get very excited about the people I work with every day. I mean, they bring out the best in me. We bring out the best in each other. They're some of the best people I've ever met, and we're like a family of sorts. And it really charges me up coming to work with them. I'm better because of them. I get excited about getting customer emails. I'll get customer testimonials about somebody wearing the Apple Watch, perhaps, that just got a notification that they have AFib, and they didn't know it and would not have known it had it not been for the watch. They go to the doctor, to the cardiologist, and he says, you would have died if you wouldn't have come in here. And so this inspires me to keep pushing forward. All of these things, we all have to find ways to be inspired, because we not only have to inspire others, but we have to find ways that we stay inspired as well. And all of these things, from customers to young people to coworkers, all of these things inspire me.
Yeah, I think it's also great to intentionally put these things in your path. You know that you're going to be able to interact with your coworkers and getting these emails, and so to seek these out, I think is helpful to continue to be inspired.
Yeah, and I think for taking the moment to be grateful for it. Because sometimes we all convince ourselves that we begin to become entitled. And I never want that for myself. I always wanted to be able to sit back and reflect and feel grateful that I do work with the people that I greatly admire, that I get to interact with young people, that our products are making a huge difference out in the world. And all of these things I am inherently very grateful for.
Yeah, that's great. I think we've all experienced it or something like it. You're raking leaves or you're cooking breakfast and you get a great idea or a solution that just seems to pop into your head. What's the first thing you do when you get a new idea that you'd like to pursue?
Well, the first thing I would do is open my notes app and write it down, or or take a voice memo on it. because I've found that I might forget it. And so if you read my notes files, they would be a bunch of random thoughts, or appear to be a bunch of random thoughts, and that's because there are a lot of things that just pop in my head at different points in time. Fortunately, the people I work with come up with a lot more ideas than I do, and I'm dependent on them as well. And so I don't have a monopoly on ideas by any means of the imagination. That's coming from all around the company at all different levels of the company. But I think it's important to document it, and then I think it's important to socialize it. And so an idea gets a lot bigger when you discuss it with somebody else. And because the 1 + 1 never equal 2. It always should equal 3 or more. And so the idea of collaboration and cross-pollination of other points of view, people that take a different lens on that idea, I think can be so powerful.
Yeah, and even like I know at Auburn, people with the same sort of training, because we have different backgrounds, different experiences, I mean, we can still, like you said, 1 + 1 always equals 3 or more. So
it's the power of diversity. The power of diversity and inclusion. When you bring people together that have different backgrounds, they come from different walks of life, and you put them together, they take a different lens on it, and they can help grow an idea to something much larger than it originally was.
Yeah, and diversity and inclusion breeds diversity and inclusion.
It does.
When you understand the importance and see how great it really is, it multiplies. So industrial engineering is a field where we have so many incredibly talented people from these diverse backgrounds we just spoke about. How does Apple think about its responsibilities to create more opportunities for people who come from communities that have been traditionally underrepresented in the field?
That's a great question. Well, we believe that education is the great equalizer, and we believe that the best products that we produce are with the most diverse teams. And so we believe that our work is materially better the more diverse and inclusive we are. And so it's an imperative to us. So what do? We do things like we just made a huge donation to the Propel Center down in Atlanta. It will be an innovation center that serves the historical Black colleges and universities, because tech is underrepresented in people of color in general. We have things like entrepreneur camps for women. We have a Black entrepreneur camp. We put a developer academy in Detroit because the businesses that are run by people of color there are enormous. And so we try very hard to think through every part of the chain, if you will, and try to do something to improve it. In the venture capital, we invested in a company called Harlem Capital that invest in businesses run by people of color. And so with each step of the chain, we're trying to do something to improve it.
Yeah, it's great to hear all of the things that Apple is doing to contribute to a more equitable society.
It's so important. I've often thought that if we could all just magically one day treat each other with dignity and respect, wouldn't the world be such a better place? Mm-hmm. Many problems in the world would fall away. Many age-old disputes where people are still fighting on ancient battlegrounds and et cetera would just fall away if they just treated each other with dignity and respect.
It sounds easy, but I think it's...
It should be easy. It is not. I would agree.
Yes, that's exactly right. Okay, is there any piece of advice that you would like to share with emerging industrial and systems engineers as we start our career?
I would say find your North Star. Find it, and if you haven't found it yet, keep looking for it. You want to find not just a job, but a calling. it took me a long time to do it. If you've already done it and you're around 20 years old, 21 years old or so, then you're very fortunate. It took me until I was at Apple, so I was 37 years old, I believe. And all of a sudden, I recognized that I was in a company where it wasn't just about conducting business. It was about something much larger than that. It was about changing the world. And so I think it's so important to have these more macro level things, because the reality at the end of the day is whether you make a fair living or not, it's not something that will motivate you long term. What motivates you is doing something for somebody else and empowering someone else to do something. And so if you haven't found that yet, keep looking.
Yeah. So you mentioned having a North Star. Do you think it's possible to have more than one?
Yeah, I do. I do. I think you can have more than one. You just don't want conflicting North Stars.
That would be confusing, to say the least. Okay, well, I think that wraps up all of my questions. Tim, I want to thank you so much for a really fun and engaging conversation. It's been especially great for me to hear how your industrial and systems engineering background has contributed to your success. Now I want to turn it back over to Alice to wrap this up. Alice?
Hey, Annie, thank you for your wide-ranging and really thoughtful questions. I think if you don't work out as an industrial engineer, you've got a career as a newscaster or interviewer for sure. And Tim, so as an added bonus for your award of the Captain of Industry, you get an honorary lifetime membership in the Institute of Industrial and Systems Engineering.
Thank you.
So hopefully you'll join us in person for a conference in the future.
I would love that.
Great. And in terms of your discussion today, it was inspirational and informative and just really a pleasure to listen to. And I know that many thousands of people are going to be listening to it in the future. And it will impact a lot of lives, especially young lives. And I want to thank you personally from the bottom of my heart for doing this and being with us today. And I also want to send appreciation from the Institute of Industrial and Systems Engineers and from the Auburn University family. And finally, I have to say it, War Eagle.
War Eagle, Alice. It was so great spending the morning with you and Annie, and I look forward to coming back down for a visit.
We'll be waiting for you.
That's great. Thank you.